Max suits. To return to this side of Planetside 2 once again is something that I don't do lightly. We have discussed these things over and over again, and I've held for a long time that max suits in this game are simply not in a healthy state. And over that time, I've thought long and hard about where I think the problems lie with max suits as they stand currently. And after a lot of thinking, I think it comes down to their current spammability and the lack of a long-term cost that is associated with pulling one. Allow me to explain. G'day there once again viewers, this is your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today, max suits are once again in our crosshairs for another video. And just before we get into this one, guys, I got to get out a huge shout out to all of those who stopped by the live stream that we ran this past weekend. It was a bit of a precursor stream to this video where we talked about max suits, and all the gameplay you're seeing in this video came from that live stream. So yeah, big probs to everyone who hung out. It was definitely the biggest stream that we've had on the YouTube channel so far, and it was good fun talking to you guys all about it. But let's get back onto the topic at hand. It has to be said, guys, that max suits in some way, shape or form have always had a pretty brutal presence on the battlefield. You see one of these things come around a corner and immediately it's panic stations. And more often than not, you're probably stuck in a situation that isn't going to see you come out alive from. And you know what? I'm okay with that in moderation. Like, if I'm holding a doorway with a squad of mates and a max suit breaches that doorway and spots me first, I expect to die. It's whatever. To me, that is where the max suit is being used within its intended purpose. If things were different, and I had, say, a better angle or warning, there's a good chance I would have a chance to take it out. You know, back when they had the charge ability, for example, dealing with them in that capacity was practically impossible, so the fact that we are no longer in that state of the game in the first place, I'm somewhat thankful for. It's a force multiplier, which in turn takes a bit of attention to kill, and while it can be an awkward target to deal with if you're in the groove of carving through regular old infantry, in moderation it's something that I'm okay in dealing with. Where I have a problem though is where things lose that sense of moderation. That to me is actually an issue that spans across the board in Planetside 2 thanks to its sandbox nature. The ability for every player to pull a force multiplier at any given point in time on a particular fight means that the game can become extremely chaotic and at times sort of unenjoyable depending on your take. Now this has its merits as it produces amazing scenes like air battles around bastions and huge armor column fights that stand out in regards to raw scale. The lacking barrier of entry and there being no force multiplier caps on territories, for example, also means that anyone can attempt to improve at any aspect of the game at a pace in which they wish to do so. But this freedom generates problems as well. It lessens the sense of impact that comes from destroying one of these force multipliers, and it also removes any real sense of importance to protect and keep them operational, because chances are, if you had lasted long enough in your current run, then you have the nanites required to get another one good to go straight away as soon as you redeploy back to the terminal. And this to me is where I start to take issues with max suits in particular as they stand currently in the game. As we said before, max suits have an important role as a force multiplier. They should be these hulking units that are designed to break stalemates, and I don't want that core ability of the unit to change. But the whole point of a force multiplier, especially within the context of infantry play, is to be a finite unit, tool, or an item that requires some active decision making behind pulling said force multiplier. Is this the right situation to pull this item? Am I going to make a return on investment with this pull? Stuff like that. So when we look at all the factors behind a max suit, like the cost of it as it stands, the ease of use for a max suit, its ability to completely mow down entire squads, especially when supported, the amount of dedication it takes to bring down a max suit on the opposing end, and the fact that the majority of capture point objectives are located within buildings or within medium range firefight locations where max suits perform best, and well, you run into a situation where max suits generally work pretty well all the time in meaningful fights. So once again, take into consideration the cost of pulling a max suit, and most importantly, the ability for any half-decent player to keep a max suit alive long enough to make a return to net zero when it comes to nanite investment. What you get is a situation where you can effectively main as a max suit player in the game, and there is no reason not to, because most fights in the game cater to the effective range of a max suit. So in turn, when we, have this force multiplier that is designed to act as a powerful tactical option that can then become the norm for anyone that sports the tiniest shred of game sense to maintain a net zero cost when it comes to nanites, you have an ability for one player to main a force multiplier that can engage entire squads at a time without hassle. When that option exists to players, the benefit of dealing with a max suit is immediately revoked. The reward for dealing with that max suit is revoked, because that player in question could just pull a brand new one immediately. That hard work is immediately undone for the player that took it out. To prove my point, during the aforementioned live stream, I ran 2 nanite boosters with my membership, and I'll confidently say that even without those boosters attached, I had no issue maining a max suit at all during the 3-hour live stream. I may have spent 15 to 20 minutes playing another class if I got stupidly aggressive. The rest of it was continuous max shittery. And yep, I can confirm that no amount of showering will get the filth off of me. And I get it. Some of you are going to say, but Cammy, that's an extreme example. You were earning the maximum amount of resources possible. You had people supporting your max suit, and you're an alright player. Of course you did well and were able to chain pull max suits. A new player or a player running a max solo wouldn't be able to do that. Firstly, the max suit shouldn't be as strong when unsupported. It's a force multiplier, that's the point. So I tended to dismiss that argument completely, and it's why I'm not a fan of the Berserker implant in general. The point here, guys, is that if you create a force multiplier like the max suit and balance it with the consideration of if you lose this item quickly, you can go ahead and pull another one shortly or immediately after as a less experienced player, the higher end echelon players of your game that know how to handle a max suit are just going to be able to abuse that feature. Losing a force multiplier that has the capacity to have such an impact on the infantry side of the game should not be a forgiving venture. You should feel it. If you have the power of a max suit and you lose it to a well-timed or executed strike by your opponents, or because you overextended, that should be it for a while. You should be punished per se, and that should be used as a learning opportunity for the next time you pull one. Balance and decisions made around the power cap and the consistency of being able to use an item, class, weapon, vehicle, whatever, should always be worked from the top down. Considering how it will perform and how it can be utilized in the hands of a higher skill player, it's important to work out how disruptive something like a force multiplier can be on the battlefield. Creating limits on how often that disruption can occur if it is successfully utilized is important to find that balance for good gameplay. Is there room for compromise to at least make things like the max suit usable for a newer player who's less experienced? Sure, accessibility into the game and its mechanics is important, but accessibility shouldn't equal a lack of punishment for being reckless and overconfident with said max suit, which segues us nicely to the whole point behind everything we've discussed so far. I strongly believe that you shouldn't be able to main a max suit in Planetside 2. It's not a standard class, it's a force multiplier. Even if you play it well, you should not be able to leave the fight you were just at and chain pull another one like it was nothing. We need to stop pretending that it is a class in some of the conversations I've had surrounding this thing. Pulling a max suit should have some tactical weight behind it, both from the perspective of the player pulling it and from the perspective of being in a platoon or a squad leader, managing your squad's resources to make such a call for, say, a max crash. It should be reserved for the most critical moments and should not just be this thing that you fall back to on a whim. And I know that some people will say, but Cammy, not many people do it. But the point is that people can, and people definitely do, ladies and gentlemen. On multiple occasions, I have murdered a max suit at a fight, only for the same person to come wandering on back in that good old suit, ready to rumble again. The time and effort I, or my team, invested in killing that max suit shouldn't be nullified because the person was able to run said max suit for a long ass time before I came along. And I'm also fully expecting this to come up in the comment section as well, so I want to address it here. But Cammy, armor and air vehicles are also technically force multipliers and people main them all the time. What's the difference here? Guys, those styles of play, while they can have indirect impacts on infantry flow and the outcomes of a base capture, they don't even come close to having the same direct, consistent impact that a max suit can have on, say, a capture point. Max suits are the only force multiplier in the game that can make consistent, measurable impacts by sheer proxy to a capture point. They're the only force multiplier that can breach a building. They're the only force multiplier that can, say, get into biolabs and containment sites in mass. They're the only force multiplier that can actually, physically, be on a capture point regularly. For that reason, max suits to me deserve their own approach to remain healthy in the game when it comes to consistency and limitations. So, what should that approach look like? Of course, this is going to look different depending on who you ask, but for me, the goals are all around maintaining that max suits are powerful and have a role to fill on the battlefield, just that there should be some weight behind the decision of pulling one, and the consequences for pulling one and being overly reckless with it should also carry over. If you're going to have the ability to farm as relentlessly as possible using one of these suckers, there needs to be a heightened sense of risk associated with it. So, here are my proposed solutions that I believe could be implemented in the very near future to create a fix to the current issues at hand. Firstly, the outright cost of the max suit should move up to 650 nanites. This creates a sense of initial value to pulling one of these suits, and should a user intend to use one, or plan to use one, or whatever, then they need to make an active decision around saving their nanites to pull one. For example, if you want to pull a max suit, maybe you need to hold off on medkits or C4 or grenades for a little bit. I know this may seem excessive, especially considering that max suits act as a strong counter to other vehicular threats in the game, but I have a potential solution to that as well, which we'll get into a bit more later. Next up, and this is the biggest one for me, implement a 15-minute cooldown timer that activates upon death of the max suit. For me, it was either this or a pause on nanite gain while you are running the max suit, but I think this is the healthier approach, as you then still have the means to resupply other gear items as normal once you're back to being a standard infantry player. This aims to address the ability to chain pull successful max suit runs and ensures that max suits can only be pulled in moderation. If you do so recklessly in a max suit, too bad, so sad, deal with the countdown timer. Use it as a learning opportunity and approach your next run with that knowledge you've gained. It's all about enforcing moderation and keeps gameplay overall healthier. And lastly, and this will be another big one, make them not revivable. This is a tough pill to swallow for many, but a max suit being able to be revived very much creates a similar problem to being able to chain pull them. A target that takes a substantial amount of effort from opponents to kill them should not be something that can be revived after the fact. The max suit is the only force multiplier in this game that can be revived upon death. The emphasis of keeping max suits alive and well should be placed during the run, not after it. Support your max suits appropriately, and the chances of this being a problem become much slimmer. That right there is how I currently picture the best case scenario for max suits. I've also toyed with the idea of limiting them to being only be able to be pulled from facilities and warp gates, but given the current redeployed side meta of the game and lacking emphasis on transportation, I feel like that might be a touch overboard. If redeploy side gets changed and there is a great emphasis placed on transportation around the map as time goes on, we can return to this concept and see how it plays out. But the changes listed above, I genuinely believe, create a healthier dynamic of how the max suit should be approached in this game as a high value line breaker unit that will have added weight behind using it properly and killing it when you're on the receiving end of it. Max crashes will also have more weight added to them and will be something that you see less of, generally speaking, but that again means that, the tactical weight of using a max crash as a last-ditch attempt effort to save a critical base for an alert has more weight to it as well. Now, as I said before, max suits are not just for farming infantry. That's where they get the most of their use from, but that's not their only role. It also has a key role in deterring enemy aircraft and ground vehicles, and I genuinely believe that the current costs and balance surrounding its ability is to be pulled into the game with that in mind. A 450 nanite cost with a no redeploy timer sounds like it's very much balanced so far from an economic standpoint of being an anti-vehicle unit. And I do also agree that a 650 nanite cost for those particular roles is steep. Too much so, in fact. So, as a caveat, I think a nice middle ground mechanic would be to have the cost of the max suit scale with weapons you attach to it in the loadout you use. So for example, the baseline cost of a max suit would be, as it stands currently, 450 nanites, but adding AI weaponry would increase the nanite cost per arm you have an AI weapon equipped, make it 100 additional nanites per arm, and you reach your 650 proposed nanites cost for the max suit that we talked about earlier. The way I see it, guys, this is an excellent middle ground to keeping max suits in the game and keeping them meaningful at best, but making them a healthier addition in total. The only way I see this hurting a certain portion of the player base is the player base who main the max suit. And I'm sorry guys, but I genuinely believe that max suit should not be mained in this game. As I said, they're not a class, they're a force multiplier, and they're a force multiplier on the infantry side of things. The max suit should just not be a playstyle, guys. It is a one-off thing that should be pulled in every once in a while to make last-ditch attempts to save or capture bases where they needed to in context to, say, an alert. They shouldn't be something that you pull just on a whim to farm infantry with. That is not a healthy application for max suits in this game, in my humble opinion. But guys, with all of that said, that is going to wrap up today's video talking about max suits in Planetside 2. I know we've done this plenty of times, but this is definitely my most up-to-date opinion on them. I know we did a similar video last year, but quite frankly, the opinions have changed. I think this is the best way to go down. I know a lot of people have suggested, why don't we just make maxes more supportive in general? I'm also down with that, but it requires a lot more dev time to completely redesign the max suit as such. This, I think, is a great middle ground, at least for the current way in which max suits implemented into the game, to make them at least a little bit healthier and keep them at least somewhat reeled in to the general balance of the game. If you guys enjoyed today's video, backhand the like button, it goes a long way, and if you're new to the channel, consider backhanding the subscribe button as well. I know I'm probably going to lose a subscriber or two from this video, but well, if you guys backhand the subscribe button if you're new here, well then maybe that'll cancel out for me. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, guys. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And, well, as always, guys, if you want to support the channel further, consider using my join button down below to become a channel member too. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.